All right, if you have a beneficiary IRA, or sometimes it's called an inherited IRA, then you need to be aware of a lot of new rules and changes that affect you. Now, these rules center around certain types of beneficiaries which were a non-spouse. So in other words, if you inherited an IRA, say from your mom or dad, or a grandparent or a family member, or really anybody that was not your spouse, then I'm talking about you. Now, the new rules went into effect in 2020. So you see, before 2020, if you inherited an IRA from a non-spouse, then you would have to start taking distributions from that IRA, which are called required minimum distributions, by the way. And the amount that you would have to take out is based on your life expectancy. And as long as you were at least taking that minimum distribution, then there would be no penalty, no excise tax, nothing like that. Everything would be okay, right? Well, the cool thing was you could just take those minimum distributions and then you could just stretch it out over your lifetime, and when you passed, then your beneficiary could do the same thing. But with the Secure Act that went into effect, well, they did away with the stretch IRA, and they said, okay, you now have to empty out that inherited IRA within 10 years. Why did they do that? Well, because the government wants that tax revenue, and they don't want to wait a lifetime to get it. And that 10-year period starts the following year of the original owner's death. Okay, got it. No more stretch, and you have to liquidate within 10 years. But what about those minimum distributions? Do we still have to take those out? Well, that was very confusing at first because the law didn't seem to address that. So advisors like me and a lot of people were kind of in the dark. We were just thinking, okay, no RMDs, just liquidate within 10 years. So the IRS just let it slide until they could determine what to do. And they essentially waived RMDs on beneficiary IRAs that inherited them in 2020 or after. That is, until now. So starting in 2025, those minimum distributions on beneficiary IRAs will have to start. And that 10-year rule does not start over. But you don't have to go back in those years you didn't take that distribution. For example, if you inherited an IRA in 2020, you still have to liquidate within 10 years following the date of death, or in this example, 2031. Now, to be clear, if you inherited an IRA prior to 2020, you are governed by the old rules, which were take at least your minimum distribution, and you could still stretch it out over your lifetime, and there is no 10-year rule for you. This is for only those that inherited an IRA in 2020 or after. By the way, I've posted other videos about inherited IRAs that you may want to check out, and while you're at it, why not subscribe to the channel? Give this video a thumbs up. It really helps get this information out there. Now, there are certain beneficiaries that can still stretch the IRA and avoid that 10-year rule. For example, if you are not more than 10 years younger of the original owner of the IRA, then you go by the old rules and do not have to liquidate within 10 years. For example, maybe you inherited an IRA from a sibling and you were close in age. Also, a surviving spouse, a disabled or chronically ill person, and a child who is under 21 are exceptions to the 10-year rule. There are also exceptions for taking RMDs. If it is a Roth IRA that you inherited, you do not have to take RMDs because Roth IRAs never had a requirement for RMDs, but you still have to liquidate it within 10 years. The other exception is if the person you inherited the IRA from was not at the age for them to start taking RMDs. Then you do not have to take those distributions, but there again, you will still have to liquidate within 10 years. So now you ask, how do you know if the original owner of the IRA was taking those minimum distributions or not? Well, it would be based on their age. For those people born from 1951 through 1959, then their RMD age was 73. For those born in 1960 or later, their RMD age is 75. So now that you know that you have to liquidate within 10 years from that inherited IRA, and you have to take at least minimum distributions, that presents some tax planning strategies. Because keep in mind, anything that comes out of that traditional IRA is fully taxable to you. So think about it. If you inherited $1 million IRA that is not a Roth, and you fully liquidate it at one time, then you will pay tax on all of that distribution at your ordinary income tax rate. So be strategic on how you do this. Here are some considerations. Let's tackle the easy one first. If you inherited a Roth IRA, I already mentioned that you don't have to take required minimum distributions from it, but you still have to liquidate within 10 years, right? So I would consider to leave it alone for those 10 years to let it potentially grow tax-free. Then at the end of 10 years, fine, pull it out, satisfy the government, do whatever you want, either reinvest it into a brokerage account, pay off some debt, spend it, or a combination. The point is, you would have 10 years of tax-free growth, and when you pull it out at the end of 10 years, it's tax-free. Now, if it is a traditional IRA that you inherited, knowing you have to liquidate within 10 years, be very strategic when you take distributions. For example, some good times to do that would be in a down market year. Let's say the market is in correction or a bear market and it's down 10 or 20%. It may make sense to take larger distributions during those time periods and reinvest elsewhere. What does that do? That leaves less in that IRA, and it could mean less in taxes you will pay down the road. Another opportunity to pull out distributions is in years that your income could be lower. Maybe you got laid off or you're out of the workforce and your income is lower, putting you in a lower tax bracket, thereby potentially paying a lower tax rate on those distributions. So again, this could take some planning on your part. Sounds like it might be a good idea to get with your financial or tax advisor before implementing these strategies. If you like what you're seeing so far, check out this next video. Subscribe to the channel. Lord willing, we'll see you next time.